Hey guys, so welcome back. This is Yogi Doug Johnson back with a Yin Yoga hip flow for you. And in this flow, we have the butterfly and the dragonfly to work the groin and adductors on the inside of the thigh. We have half butterfly to stretch the hamstrings and extensors on the back of the thigh. We have square or shoelace, and that's to work our glutes or abductors. And then finally we have the half saddle, which is for our quadriceps and hip flexors on the front of the thigh and the hip. Anyway, I hope you get a lot from this, and if you do, consider giving a like, a thumbs up, a subscribing to the channel, and if you'd like to help support me, it's viewers like you that support this channel and me making these videos. You can do that through a one-time donation, which is down in the links below, or by becoming a patron on Patreon. Anyway, let me know what you think and enjoy the flow. So today we're going to start with what's called a butterfly pose. And what we'll like to do is just bring the soles of our feet in like so. And then we will pull them in, drop our knees, and then come forward. And what we'd like to feel is a stretch right in here on the inside of the thighs. So if you do not feel that, then let me know. Otherwise, you just relax into it, and you'll notice I'm not pulling or pushing anything as I do this. I'm just sort of letting gravity pull me down. I'm not pulling, gravity is doing it. And that's what I recommend that you do. So just a nice, relaxed, easy folding forward. You don't have to keep your spine straight, but you can if you like. That might intensify the stretch. And if this feels like a little too much, maybe in your back or your hips, you can use support. So the way that you would do that is a block under your forehead, or maybe 2 blocks under your knees. 2 blocks under your forearms. There are many ways you could lay on a bolster, which is like a big pillow. So there are many ways that you could use support to lessen the intensity. Otherwise, what you'd like to do is just stay here. We're already been here over a minute. And in this style of yoga, what we'd like to do is just stay with the stretch. So again, the stretch is in here. And what we'd like to do is just stay for a full 5 minutes. So, at this point, we're looking at about 3.5 more minutes. Now, depending on what you do in your life, that may or may not feel good. You might welcome that or not welcome that. I'll put it that way. So some people, their life is so stressful and crazy that if they have a moment to relax and be still, they welcome that and they like that. And they say, yes, good. I don't have to do anything for the next 5 minutes. And then some other people, they don't like the way it feels to be still. They feel really antsy. They feel almost like they're being maybe like claustrophobic, like, oh my God, I need to move, I need to do something, I can't just sit here. What I will propose to you is that either way, whether you like the way it feels or you don't like the way that it feels, as long as you are safe, physically speaking, like you're not damaging your body, and if you think you're not safe, you do need to come out of this immediately. And again, we maybe need to talk about what the issue is, but that's not most people's experience. Most people can do this and feel safe, but they may not feel comfortable. They may not like the way they feel. So if the pose feels safe, but you are uncomfortable, or it's difficult to be still, it's still benefiting you. That's the point that I would like to make, that a lot of stuff that we don't like in life benefits us. So things like taking tests. Yes, tests can really benefit us. Going to school, working out. There are many examples in life of things that are painful, they are difficult, they don't feel good, but they still benefit us. So regardless of how you personally feel about this, try and keep that in mind, that as long as you're not hurting yourself physically, then you are helping yourself, even if this is personally a difficult thing to do. Just 1 minute left here. Okay, so we'll use an inhalation to come back up. And now what we'd like to do is a different stretch for the groin. So this is our groin, and that's where we're stretching. What I'd like to do is take the legs straight and wide. Okay, so now we're here. And again, I want to be able to come forward and down nice and relaxed. And for some people, once they straighten the legs, that's really difficult. So if that's you, I have a few recommendations. One is sitting on something. That could be a folded blanket, a big pillow like a bolster, or a yoga block if you have one. Another thing you can try is bending your knees. You can do that a little or a lot. And as long as you still feel a stretch here, these are called your adductors on the inside of the groin. So as long as you still feel the stretch in your adductors, you might feel it in your hamstrings as well, the back of the leg, but it's really here that we're targeting, the groin, adductors, then no problem. You just stay with it, okay, even if your knees are bent. And once again, you can use support under your forearms or forehead or torso if it's a little too intense for you, and it might be. Otherwise, you just relax and stay with the pose. And the wonderful thing about this practice is once you're in position, you are going to continue to benefit from the pose. So you don't really need to do anything. I think in our culture, we grow up with this idea that if we aren't doing something, then we're wasting time. I know I certainly did. I can't speak for you, but I certainly grew up with this idea of if I'm relaxing, if I'm just sitting there, that's boring. I'm wasting my time. I should be doing something always. And this is very different than the way the yogis and the Taoists perceive stillness and quiet. What they have discovered through centuries, well, really millennia of practice, thousands of years of practice, is that there's real value in being still and being quiet. It's not to say that there's not value in doing stuff and getting stuff done. There is. But you do that all the time. You know the value of moving and doing stuff. Most of us in our culture don't know the value of stillness and silence. Now, I know what you might be thinking, and that might be, well, I do that every night when I sleep, right? Sounds right. You get in bed, you get relatively still and quiet, and you go to sleep. What you may not realize is much of the time that you're asleep, your brain is actually in overdrive. You're dreaming. And dreams are very, very active. Very, very active. There is a time when you're asleep where your brain sort of stops. It's called deep dreamless sleep. But that's not most of the evening or most of the night. That's a relatively small portion. And the other part is you're not conscious. You are unconscious. You are asleep. You dream a lot, and you may remember a few of your dreams, but there are many that you won't remember. And you don't remember that deep, dreamless sleep portion. So what the Taoists and the yogis discovered, and what I teach, is that there is a added value to being conscious when you are still and relatively quiet. And that could be called meditation. Many things are called meditation, and I have my own definition and ideas about that, but we could call that, when we're beginning to get still, beginning to get quiet, that we're beginning to enter into more of a meditative state. So once again, this is something we want to invite into a practice like yin yoga, which we're doing today. We've got just over 30 seconds left here. Okay, now we do a very special thing in our practice, which in yin we call a rebound. What we'd like to do is come up and then just gradually make our way back onto our back and relax in more of a neutral position. Now, while we're relaxing, we want to pay attention to what we feel in our body. In our heart or our emotions. And we also want to notice the state of our mind, thoughts. And we aren't trying to notice so that we can decide whether what we notice is good or bad. The minute we start to bring in those concepts, we actually start to create barriers to true perception. So rather, we just want to notice what is. Then, after the rebound, we'll bring our legs in and give them a little squeeze, and this is a counter stretch. There are many counter stretches, and this is one that we call the leg cradle. You could do another one if it felt better. The purpose or idea behind counter stretching is to bring a little relief. When we were relaxing in the rebound, you might have felt certain areas that felt very vulnerable and sensitive. And so we move to try and alleviate that before moving into our next set of postures as best as we can. It may not go away completely, but hopefully we feel a little bit more balanced. Then we'll use a very active, or another way of saying active is yang, as opposed to yin is not active. So we'll use a very yang, active posture to bring ourselves up to seated. What we do is we take the hands and slide them under our hips with the palms down. Take the legs, extend them straight up toward the ceiling. Now, if there's any pain in your back, you're going to bend your knees until that pain goes away. Otherwise, you try keeping the legs straight. Lift the head and neck, take a nice deep breath. Exhale, slowly lower the legs toward the ground, and just before they touch, pause. Inhale, pop those legs up, and exhale, let the weight of your legs pull you up to a seat. Okay, now that we're seated, we'll get on with our next set. And this is a pose that's called half butterfly pose. I'll go ahead and turn this way for this one, just so you can see perhaps a little better what I'm doing with my legs. So my right leg is straight. The left foot comes to the inside of the thigh. The exact position of that foot is not that important. You'll notice that my foot is relaxed. I'm not flexing it, but you could if you prefer, but I'm just going to let it relax. I'm not pointing it in any particular direction. And once again, I just come forward and down like so. And what I'd like to feel is a stretch in the back of the straight leg. So those are the hamstrings. I mentioned them in the last set. And what we're trying to do is stretch those hamstrings out. Okay. Now this knee is, you can see it's off the ground a little bit. I'm quite comfortable with that. But some people might have a lot of tension in their adductors, which is what we were just stretching, and that might make this uncomfortable or painful. So if that's the case, as I mentioned in the last set, you could put something under this knee to support it. Okay. You could also, again, sit on a block, put blocks under your forehead or forearms. Now, anytime we come into a posture, we want to check two things. That we feel the stretch in the target area, which is the back of the right thigh. And then we also want to check that this feels safe for our body. And if we feel that both of those things are happening, then again, there really is nothing more to do but just relax and allow the pose to have its effect on our body. Okay, so we use an inhalation to come up, switch legs, and this is again half butterfly. Half butterfly in yin is the yin variation of a very traditional yoga pose called Janu Shirshasana, which basically translates to English as head to knee pose. Don't worry about putting your head on your knee. If you can, great. It's not very important. What is important is the stretch here in the back of our thigh. Okay, so just relax. Let gravity do the work for you. There are postures where you'll need to make more of an effort, and I will point those out to you, but this is a fairly relaxed pose, and it should be approached in a relaxed way. Otherwise, you do increase the risk of injury here in your low back, and this is where a lot of people in our culture get injured. It's like 80% of Americans end up with a low back problem at some point. So we really want to be careful about that. Okay, let's gradually make our way back onto our back, and we will relax in again what we call a rebound. The more stillness during the rebound, the better. And then we'll bring our legs in, shake it out. Again, this is a different phase. This is the counter stretch phase. And then we go ahead and hinge on up to seated. Okay, so now what we'd like to do is a pose called, well, two poses, one of two. This is either called square pose or it's called shoelace pose. So square pose, we'll start there. At its most simple is just a cross-leg position like I'm in now. And I think we've all done this in school before, sitting on the floor like this, our legs crossed. And exactly the width of your knees and the position of your feet, it's not that important. What is important is that your knees, ankles, and hips feel okay, they feel safe. And then when you fold forward, what you want to feel is a stretch out here, probably in the right leg. So this is my right leg. You feel it here, but you might feel it in both, which is fine. Okay, so you come forward, you feel the stretch. I do. But some people will come forward and they won't feel much of anything. So if that's you, the next step I can recommend is this, taking this foot and placing it on top of the other foot, like so. Okay, this is still what we would call a square pose in a yin. And we come forward and down. And again, we should feel a nice, powerful stretch here. And again, maybe in both hips. All right, and again, it's important the ankle and the knee, everything is happy with what we're asking them to do. And then finally, if there's a pinching here, and there might be for some people, you can play around with exactly where your knees are pointing, but you might find it difficult to get around that pinching here. So again, the sensation is not here, it's here, not here, but here. So if I feel it here, I can try this position, which is called a shoelace pose. Okay, same idea, we're still stretching here, we still come forward and down, but now we're stretching out here. Okay, so same intention, just different position of the legs. So you can choose the one that you think makes the most sense for you today. I think I'm going to do this one today. Not for any particular reason other than I haven't done it in a little while, so I think it might be good for my body to try this variation today. So now we're targeting what is called our gluteals or glutes. These are 10 muscles along with the rotators that live in the outside of our hip. So if you've been following along, we stretch the inside of the thigh, the groin, then we stretch the back of the thigh, those are the hamstrings, and now we're stretching the outside of the hip and thigh, and we will conclude or finish up by stretching the front of our thighs. So we'll have covered all of those bases. Okay, so we've got about 4 more minutes left here. We're about halfway through. You might see I'm repositioning myself, taking myself a little deeper. And that's something you can explore doing after you've been in the pose for a minute or two, even though generally we're trying to be still. Sometimes it's necessary to readjust or move. I do want to mention or point out that deeper is not necessarily better, so never think that you always need to push further or deeper into a posture, or that doing so makes the pose better. But sometimes it does. So that is a case-by-case basis. Okay, so coming up, take your time, so there's no rush at all. You don't need to move quickly. In fact, if you're doing the postures properly, there probably is a natural inclination to move more gradually or slowly. But once you're up, we will switch legs. This is an asymmetrical posture, which means that we must ultimately do both sides to really create balance, if that's what we're wanting. Okay, so gradually coming in on this side, again, make sure, verify you feel the stretch. Also verify that this is within the range of what you feel is safe for your body. Again, most of us have a range, so some of us, that range is very narrow because of injuries or maybe age. Other factors could just be genetic. And others have a very wide range of what they feel is safe for them. I think in our modern culture and setting, many people underestimate the range of what is actually safe for them to do. It's not a bad thing to do in the outset when starting something new. So if you're new to yin, it's not a bad idea to underestimate what you can do safely. But hopefully over time and through practice, you gain confidence and knowledge about what your body actually can do safely. And the reason I mention this is there's a lot of benefit to taking your body to what in yoga is called your edge. So what is your edge? Your edge is where you are right at the edge, thus the name, of what you can do safely. And for whatever reason, this is very beneficial for our bodies to work at our edge. And if we're trying to train for a marathon, let's say, and we always run the distance that is easy and comfortable for us, then we won't really make very much progress in training. If, however, we work at our edge, we will feel very uncomfortable. We will also probably be very sore after training, but we will see a lot of progress, and we will see our body adapt to the stresses that we are placing on it and become healthier and stronger as a result. So it's no different in yoga. When I stress my body intentionally and safely, but at an edge, my body adapts and might become healthier, stronger, more flexible. These are all things that can happen. More impervious to injury or damage. And the interesting thing about yoga is most people report, if they do it long enough, that it affects them emotionally and mentally as well. So you might find after practicing yoga regularly, a few times a week, that things that used to upset you, they don't upset you as much, or you're able to stay calm. It might change your outlook on life. You might find your mood is just all around better. Many things that can affect how we think and feel. You also might find your mind is more clear. All right, so we're about 3.5 minutes in, so we've got about 1.5 minutes left here. All right, so we're coming up, and then again, we're going to take a few moments to just relax on our back and feel what we call the rebound. Let's bring our legs in now, again, for a little counter stretch. Today we're doing a lot of this particular one, leg cradle, but there are others, and in other sequences we'll do more of those. And again, we'll hinge up to seated. And we'll do what for at least some people may be the most difficult posture in today's class. Most challenging or scariest. Okay, so what we'd like to do is take the right leg now and fold it back. Now the problem with this is this often creates discomfort in the knee. It might create discomfort in the foot and the ankle. So I'm going to try and address those things. If your foot hurts That's very often because we have lots of bones and joints in the foot. And in this position, they can press aggressively into the ground. I'm on a carpet and I've got this additional padding here. So it feels okay for me, but you might be on concrete or something, a wood floor, and it might hurt. That's not a feature of this posture. So grab a blanket. You can roll it up if you want, put it under the ankle joint so the joint does not need to stress so much. Place a blanket under the bones of the foot so they're not pressing so hard into the ground. Okay, now there are two positions for the foot. One is this one, which is most people will feel best with their foot in this position. An alternate looks like this, and this is where I feel more comfortable. And the minority of students will prefer this, like me. So you can try them out. You may already know which one you prefer. The next thing I want to discuss is the knee. So the knee might be in pain. And if it is, there's a few things you can try. One is just repositioning the knee. For many people, the wider or the further out the knee goes, the better. Another option is to sit up on something. So a folded blanket, a block, even a bolster. Okay, so we don't want the knee or the ankle to be in pain. Statistically speaking, these are the two areas that are most often injured with any kind of exercise. So not just yoga, running, gymnastics, skating, it doesn't matter. These two here, these are the weak links. So we make sure they're okay, they're happy. The next thing you want to check is, do you feel a stretch in the front of your right thigh? You may or may not. I don't in this position. So since I don't, and only because I don't, I begin to lower back. Okay, so first I can try my elbows. I can put something behind me like a big pillow, lay on that. I can come to the crown of my head, or perhaps all the way back onto my back. And this is called a half saddle pose. Again, I want to feel a stretch at the front of my thigh. You might notice my knee is popping up here a little bit. Sometimes teachers and other people, yoga teachers, they freak out like that's going to, that's the most dangerous thing that can happen. It's fine for most people. If you feel, again, unsafe with your knee off the ground, by all means, put your knee on the ground. But there's nothing inherently bad about having your knee up. Very often that's actually safer than trying to push it down like I am right now. So it's actually less stress to let the knee pop up a little bit. Feel free to support it if you need support. And what do you do if you don't really feel much stretch in your thigh and you're all the way back on your back? Well, the next thing to try is bending the left knee like so, placing it on the ground. Okay? This may not make sense of why bending this knee would create a stretch here, but it's because the legs are connected. If that doesn't work, the next thing to try is dropping the knee out to the side like this. You could even put the foot on top of the thigh. And then finally, if you're really, really bendy, you reach down, you grab the leg and pull it up. You could even straighten that leg and pull it overhead. Some students need to go that far. This variation usually works for me. I've got a little bit of stretch in the front of my thigh. I'm relatively comfortable, relatively relaxed. The final area that you may feel this is in your back. It is a back bend, and it is a very therapeutic pose for your back and your sacroiliac joint, your lumbar spine. But like most therapies, they can both help and harm, depending on if we're dealing with someone with a healthy back, healthy SI joint, an injured one, and again, what injury specifically are we talking about? So again, if you're new today, just do the best you can. And if something feels unsafe, feel free to come out of it or to try modifying it. And again, if you need any help, you just let me know. About halfway.
Okay, so please take your time making your way out of the pose. Some people can just release the leg like that. Other people need to push themselves up. Other people need to roll to the side. However you come out of it safely is fine. There's no one way. There's no one right way. And this is an important point because sometimes in yoga, people get trained as teachers and they think that the way that they learned is the only safe way to do that, and that's usually not the case. There's usually multiple ways that will work, and some ways work for some people and some ways work for others. So feel free to find the way out of that that makes the most sense for your body. Now let's go ahead and switch sides. You might find that one side is different than the other. This is pretty common, so I wouldn't be too shocked or surprised by that. You may not have had pain in one side and then you do feel it in the other. It may have been not intense on one side and then quite intense on the other. This is just the way that our bodies usually are. And we can run into a lot of trouble if we dogmatically think, well, both sides of my body should be the same, so I'm going to force the side that isn't as flexible or isn't as strong to do what the other side does. It's almost never the case that our body is perfectly symmetrical. So we're going to tend to find aches and pains and things going on one side of our body that we may not experience in the other. Whether that's due to, again, personal history of injuries and things that we've done to create imbalance, or just simply from birth. Most of us have certain imbalances that are present in our body, and we very often are not aware of them until we practice yoga, because we do sort of go deeper into our body and we can realize, oh, this feels different, and oh, this isn't quite the same on this side versus that side. I can't go as far. I can't do as much. And again, this is to be expected. A little over halfway. Just about 1 minute left here. Okay, so we gradually make our way out of that. You may have to come up, you might be able to stay on your back, but again, we take a moment to rebound and relax. And then if you'd like to counter stretch, you bring the legs in, move around a little bit. Again, call that the leg cradle. And then usually what I recommend is at the end of a class like this, we've done about an hour, 60 minutes of practice. I recommend that you relax for about 6 minutes on your back. And you do that in this position, which in yin we call a pentacle. Your arms can really be in any position that they're comfortable, but I recommend palms up. Your head is centered, chin tucked in slightly, eyes closed. You can see my legs are at a comfortable distance, whatever that is for you. And the idea is to be as comfortable as you can be so that for the next 6 minutes, and you can set a timer, you just allow your body to rest in stillness. Again, in our culture, we tend to not think that rest is that valuable, but it really, really is. All right, I hope you enjoyed that flow. And again, if you did, please give me a like, subscribe, hit the bell icon if you're on YouTube, and consider making a contribution to help me keep making these videos for free. All right, everyone, till next time, namaste.